Good evening. Welcome to PS. This is The Last of Us, a show where we discuss the HBO series The Last of Us. And each week we'll be giving our opinions, criticisms, and having discussions of each episode in the series. We've already gone 1 through 8, so if this is your jumping on point, go back to episode 1, And we'll also be discussing a PlayStation award-winning game of the same title and weighing them against one another. The show will be available every Monday night, but this is the last Monday night, as far as I'm aware of, on our YouTube channel. We'll be spoiling the game in these conversations, and we're going to be having conversations with the understanding that you, the listener, the viewer, have watched the episode we're going to talk about. So for those just stopping by, my name's Fred Oakman, and this is Jake Peters. Now, we host a weekly PlayStation podcast. It's titled P.S. This is Awesome, a PlayStation podcast. We've been going strong for many years. So if you're interested in weekly PlayStation discussions or interested in viewing more content like this video, just subscribe to this YouTube channel and we'll do the rest of the heavy lifting. Lastly, we do have a Patreon for our PlayStation podcast. So if you want and you like what we're doing here or over there, for $1 a month, we'll give you a shout out on the show and mail you a free die cut vinyl sticker to show our appreciation for your appreciation. And we'll just keep doing that back and forth maybe. But you can find that at patreon.com/PS. This is awesome. Your $1 each month goes a long ways in helping us sustain the costs of doing the show. And today, we're obviously having a conversation about Season 1 of The Last of Us, Episode 9, which is the last episode, and it's titled Look for the Light. So I guess before we go any further, this wraps up. This wraps it up. This is The Last of Us now on in film, in a series, some sort of live action series. It's done. We've all been subjected to it now. We all have formed our opinions. We all, we're consumers of this. So we know how we feel about it. But before we start talking about that, for the sake of posterity and for the sake of immortalizing Mr. Donnie, who is the veterinarian who listens to our show, he responded to our inquiry, our verbal discussion about whether or not injecting penicillin into the wound site would be effective. We know that Joel has received this shot from Ellie last episode, and we kind of had a back and forth, Jake and I, and I'm going to take the liberty of reading Mr. Consola. Ooh, I said his name. It's all right. It's in the YouTube comment, so anyone can see it. His very expertise response and assistance with that question. He says, "Hey fellas, penicillin can be given by a variety of routes, including intraperitoneally in the abdominal cavity." So I hope I did all right with those words. And then he writes, "Based on the length of the needle and depth that Ellie inserted it, I suspect this is where the drug went. In parentheses, versus in the muscle or fatty layer." Donnie writes, "It would be absorbed by the capillaries in the abdomen and distributed through the body. However, she definitely took some risk of puncturing/lacerating some important structures within the abdomen, like the liver or intestine. I'm loving PS. This is The Last of Us. Cheers." Thank you for writing in, Donnie. I appreciate your expertise as always. And very good to know. And now, one thing he didn't touch on, and we don't need him to, I think we've already ruled it out, is that, that shot of penicillin isn't going to bring Joel back from the dead in a matter of hours. It's going to take a while to work. It's magic. He might feel a little relief, maybe, and it might start to take its, effect, but Joel's not going to feel that quick. I think that's all agreed on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Consola. It's not like a shot of Narcan or something. I think the antibiotics take a while to resuscitate people. But anyways, thank you for writing in. And like I said, Jake, this is our last episode. Unless you do want to do a final one down the road. We haven't had that discussion. I kind of brought it up, blindsided you with that. idea last show, and we haven't talked about it since, so we're going to leave that off the table for now. But this podcast may pop up in one more form or another. It'll definitely show back up, I'm guessing, when they make The Last of Us Season 2, I think, if Jake's on board. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, we'll do this again in 2 years when that show rolls out, probably. But there may be one left in the chamber. We'll see. Jake, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. I'm curious about the kind of how people will receive this last episode, because it's pretty. I mean, we kind of knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's pretty. I don't dark. I guess I don't know. Dark is obviously a way to put it, but
Excuse me.
it paints Joel in a light that I think is kind of a right turn from where he was heading in throughout the story so far. Obviously, Joel was always kind of a hard ass or whatever, but rather than it's interesting, like this episode kind of shows that part of his character is still there, and rather than him softening and becoming more, I don't know, lovable for the lack of a better term, with his relationship with Ellie, his relationship with Ellie ends up amplifying that part of his nature in some ways. And it's
His
kind of
protective
wild.
nature, right?
Yeah, just like his violence and what he's willing to do. And I will admit I was kind of shocked that this being the season finale was one of the shortest episodes of the season. I was thinking that it was going to end up being longer, that there was going to be a little bit more sort of lead in to the final showdown, as it were. But they
Yeah.
just decided to jump right in. I don't know how you feel about that.
I'll say this. I am disappointed with the length of the show because I think about it like this. This is the end of the show. This is it. This is your. And you know, I'm not all for, you know, the expose of a finale. You know, it doesn't need to be longer than it needs to be. It doesn't have. Just because it's the end doesn't mean it has to be super long. But, I mean, come on. Ellie's episode with Riley was over an hour, wasn't it?
It's like an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes, yeah.
And it was just them hanging out in a mall. I mean, there was more to it than that, but to me, it just seems kind of like, why give so much attention to that and not, you know, 20 more minutes to the end of the show to build this up a little bit more, or like, I don't know. They definitely hit all of the points they needed to hit, and I've got some super opinions about some other things, how they went about it. And you know, your brother had written into the show, Josh, and I forgot to channel his comment into the show, so I apologize, Josh. Let me find it. We have a lot of comments for our PlayStation podcast, so his might have got buried a little bit here. If you guys can just bear with me for a moment, he had written something to the effect. Let me see here. Where are my comments at? Here we go. Josh wrote, in response to our review of episode 8, When We Are in Need, he says, I agree that it would have been cooler. It would have been a cooler scene in the dark, meaning the whole scene at the end where Ellie comes out of the burning building. He said, but I don't know anything about filming a huge set like this, so maybe there were logistical issues. That's a good point. And then he also writes, I kind of disagree with the idea that we needed to see Joel go ham. But that's only because I'm hoping that we get a large dose of holy shit Joel in episode 9. So I'm still not sure that we got a holy shit Joel, in my personal opinion.
I will say that I have some other kind of issues. I don't know, issues are not the right word. I think that the last episode was still great, but I actually really liked the way that they did the scene with Joel going through the hospital, killing all the fireflies. I love that it was like quiet and slow, and there was all this like music in the background that was like really kind of sort of like a touching, more somber kind of music as he's just fucking mowing all these people down, and he's just got like this look of determination on his face that like shows no remorse whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's very like I don't know, like it just adds a tone, I think, to his character that just drives home that and this is what I was talking about earlier about how I really wonder what people who didn't play the game, what they're going to think of this, because this episode, if you weren't sure before, and I think a lot of people probably weren't sure before, this episode really drives home that Joel's kind of a bad guy. And like everything about this episode, other than the fact that he loves this little girl, is that Joel is a bad guy. And he's willing to literally throw humanity under the bus for his for his basically adopted child at this point.
Well,
and it's interesting.
Yeah, let's walk through it kind of how we do. When we get to that part, I have some opinions, and I'm excited to share them with you. And I want to hear more of your opinions on that as well. But so one thing as a gamer, is this now canon? Is this now the way this opens up? Now is this canon with the game?
You're talking about how we figure out where Ellie comes from.
Yeah.
Because they don't tell you in the game.
We still didn't know, so this is new for us. We didn't know.
Unless there was something, because did you read the comics? Like, was there something in the comics?
Yeah, I read them, but there was nothing in there.
Okay, so cool thing, which I thought was kind of a nice touch, was that Ashley Johnson played Ellie's mom, which was really kind of neat because Ashley Johnson, if you don't know, played Ellie in the game the last time.
How does she look so much like Ellie?
Because of the capture, like there was motion capture and stuff when they did the game. So it's like, and I think a lot of it is driven home by the fact that her voice is exactly the voice from the game.
I meant more like Bella Ramsey Ellie though. Like she.
Oh, I think they just.
Did they do some digital tweaking to her face?
I don't think so. I think it's just
makeup.
I think there's a little bit of subconscious sort of melding of characters in that point where we're just like, we kind of feel it in the way that it's presented and the way that it's told, and so we just kind of subconsciously think that they look similar, which is really kind of an interesting thing. And it just goes to show you how well they did the makeup and props and all those guys did to really bring this thing to life. But and I think that just her voice and her talking kind of drove that home. But
okay.
If they were going to show this, and honestly, I thought that this whole thing was kind of hokey. But other than the part, like literally the part where Marlene gets baby Ellie and ends up having to kill, I guess Anne is her name, I think, Ellie's mom, I think that part's okay. I mean, it's serviceable.
Yeah.
But I don't know about this whole like, oh, like wouldn't it have been a little bit more? I think it's just a little bit more interesting to not know why Ellie is immune. Because this is very like superhero like Spider-Man kind of shit. Where
we're getting close to that at this point.
Where it's like, oh, well, mom was bit right as she was born, so
it went through the umbilical cord and gave her some sort of immunity. Yes.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like,
and then she had to.
I don't know.
The thing that was weird was that like Ellie's mom's like, I cut the cord before I was bit. I cut the cord before I was bit.
She was lying, yeah.
But it's like,
which is
how do they even know that even means anything? You'd think they at least give the kid a benefit of the doubt. Like, what's a baby who can't even walk gonna do if they turn into a zombie? You're just gonna kill it if it turns into a clicker or whatever, infected, right? You're just gonna have to deal with it then. But like, you got to give it a shot. Like, what are they gonna do? Just kill the newborn? Like. That is her defense was such a weird. as a mom, I guess I understand.
get it.
I'm not a mom, but
I get it.
I get why that would be her rationale in the moment. Like, hey, no, I did this, even though she was lying about it. I get
But
it.
what did you think of the whole like explanation for how Ellie was immune? Because I was just kind of like, I'm not gonna go as far as to say that I was put off by it, but I was just kind of disappointed that we even found out. Like, I kind of just wish that they had just left that sort of. I would have been okay with her not getting bit and just birthing that child and dying in childbirth or something like that, and then just have us still kind of not really know
Right.
why she was immune. But there's something about the way that they did it that just to me seemed kind of cliche and just sort of out of pocket for the rest of the writing of the show.
Yeah. I that I'm not really sure how I feel about it, but I just it wasn't necessary because we didn't have it as gamers and we didn't need that information. I think some things are better left unexplained.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of those mysteries that, like, I'm okay with them not telling us any of this.
Do you think that maybe, and I'm seriously not trying to talk down on anybody, but like, do you think that HBO or just TV producers in general just think that like TV audiences are like they wouldn't be satisfied? Like, because remember, these are the same people that are like whining and crying about there being an episode about two homosexuals.
But dude,
Like,
gamers are
they,
the same way. Gamers are the same
yeah.
way.
But it's interesting to me that they, for television, they changed some of this stuff.
But that might have been Druckmann.
It could be that it doesn't matter. I mean, I might be overthinking it a little bit, and I think I probably am. But yeah, I don't know. I think that, like I said, I think that this scene is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's a pretty kind of an emotional thing. I like the idea of the cameo that Ashley Johnson makes here, and there's another cameo later in the show. I don't know if you knew about the one later, but this was just one of those scenes that I felt like, was it really necessary? I don't think so.
The intro scene.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, because this was like the cold open. They haven't done a cold open in a few episodes. Actually, since like the third episode, they haven't done one. And so this was kind of the second or third episode. So this was kind of interesting that they did one for this. But I don't know. I guess that's where I'll leave it.
Yeah.
I'm indifferent about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it was necessary, man. I don't think it was necessary. And I was trying to send you the picture here of Ashley Johnson and Bella Ramsey. I superimposed it on the YouTube, like I did that one time. And it kind of screwed up something real quick, so I had to fix it. Yeah, man, I don't know. They look awfully familiar, similar to me. The way they did their hair and the faces. The faces look so much alike. It's weird. But I don't think the scene's necessary. But my back to my question is this now gonna, if we get a Last of Us 3 or we get another Last of Us, is this now Ellie's story in the game? Is this how her mom dies? Now do they reveal this in? Does the show possibly spoil something that could have been revealed to us in the next Last of Us?
I think, and I'm just speculating here, but I think that if this is considered canon, it will be a non-factor in the next game.
It won't even be brought up.
It won't even be brought up because nobody, theoretically, based on what happens at the end of this episode, there's nobody left that even knows. Ellie doesn't even know why she's immune.
Yeah, that's true.
So how would she even find out? So
yeah, she wouldn't.
It doesn't seem
unless there's like some sort of
for
flashback or something. Yeah.
Or even like maybe there's like some written down somewhere. She finds a note from Marlene or something stupid. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it's gonna be relevant, I guess.
But we learn her name. Her name's Anna.
Yes.
Ellie's mother's name is Anna. And that is all new to us gamers. So we never knew that. So and then I think filmmakers and creators try to find a dichotomy, right? Some sort of juxtaposition between characters or some similarities that you otherwise wouldn't think, and they try to make sense and make draw parallels. And Marlene and Anna were really good friends, and Marlene had to kill Anna. Ellie and Riley were really good friends, and Ellie had to kill Riley. So now that just means that Ellie and Marlene have more in common with one another than they thought. And then you start, oh, that's so smart. That's so clever, right? And then it's just like, nah, it's just like, it didn't need to be there. I'm not ragging on it, but I mean, like, it just seems like it's a little too obvious that they would have done that. I don't know. It's not badly written at all, but I don't know. It just didn't need to be there, as far as I'm concerned. They could have spent more time of Joel and Ellie before they get captured by fireflies in this episode. They could have spent more of that one-on-one time they had.
Yeah.
Because that felt rushed. But anyways, it does that whole intro, and then Ellie sitting in the back of the truck, and Joel is real father-like now, and he's like looking for like board games and stuff for her and talking with her about like, oh, I got some Chef Boyardee, you know. And Ellie's obviously kind of removed from the conversation. Her mind's elsewhere. She seems kind of vacant. And he brings up wanting to teach her guitar, which is important because that will come up next season. You know, in before you know it, they're cutting through a building and the giraffe is there all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. What'd you think of the giraffe scene?
So there's some stuff that I think was questionable in terms of VFX in this show. Most of it was great. There was some stuff that was questionable. I thought that they did a really good job with the giraffe. It was obviously CG, but it looked good enough that if you weren't really focusing on it, you might have thought that it was a real giraffe. And so I was kind of wondering if they were going to get a real giraffe for this or not. It might have been a little bit too
dangerous, maybe.
Or maybe there wasn't a good way for them to do it in real life on a set or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. This scene, this whole kind of sequence is very similar to the game, and where they're just kind of going through the ruins of Salt Lake City until they get to the top of this building, and Ellie finds this giraffe, and it's very... It's basically, it's exactly the game, right? Even a lot of the dialogue is exactly the same. They didn't change hardly any of it.
I think the only thing that's a little different, I think in the game, don't they set it up a little more where Ellie's more obviously upset about the situation and Joel doesn't know what's going on? Doesn't he press her a little bit? Like, hey, come on, here, help me with this ladder. Or, come on, help. And then she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to. And she doesn't want to. And he's like, Ellie, you coming? And then she finally helps him. Like, there's a little more of that. I think that her inward thinking is more on display in the game than it was in the show.
I think that it maybe went on longer in the game, but I don't know that it was any more
prevalent,
intense one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but I mean, as I've demonstrated multiple times, there are many things about the game that I don't remember clearly, which is amazing considering how many times I played it.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I think that part is fine.
Yeah. Well, I think the only thing about it, real quick, the only thing about it that I thought they missed was that, like, when I played that game and that scene happened, she gets up the ladder first. And then you hear her say, Joel, and she runs away after they had this weird moment where she's like very disconnected from him and from everything. And then he's like nervous now, like, oh shit, what's going through this girl's head? She wasn't really didn't really tell him, like, what's going on? What is she doing? You know? And then she's like, come here, look. And then you're like, oh fuck, okay, it's something kind of cool. You know, and then it like brings you back off the ledge a little bit, and you're like, okay, they're good. You know, they missed that a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, I guess I think that they did a pretty good job, but I can understand that moment in particular was one of the more touching moments in the game, and I think this is one of those things where perspective is important because we're viewing this from a derivative point of view. Like, this isn't what we originally experienced.
Right.
So we already had this touching moment in this incredible way after we've already spent, 10 or 15 hours with these two characters, and then this moment happens and it's very important and touching. And now we're experiencing it through this kind of TV lens that's sort of duplicated and rushed a little bit, and it's like many of these scenes, I wonder if it's just our perspective that makes it seem a little bit off, and not that like the people that are viewing it for the first time maybe aren't having these same kind of thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're probably impacted the same way we were when we played the game. It's just, for whatever reason, I still feel, and I think it's because you have agency over the character a little bit, I just feel like some of these moments hit way differently in the game than they have on the show. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's me just knowing the story. I think it has more to do with, I think it just speaks louder about, the interactivity in a video game and the amount of time you can sit down with it and sit down with those characters and learn them. This did feel kind of rushed all in all. I can't believe the season's over. But yeah, the giraffe scene was good, and I do agree with you. Some of the visual effects have been. It's bad when they're noticeable, and there was something goofy, with the giraffe that I noticed, but it wasn't as bad as maybe the big bloater. The big bloater scene was awesome, but like there were moments where it was just moving too quick or something. Like it looked like it was like a claymation sped up or something at one point. You didn't quite get the timing down for the animation or something. They put too much movement in too fast when they were chopping it up. But I don't know. Some of it was just some of it has been bad. I not bad, but considering how much they're spending per episode, it's surprising that I've seen better visual effects elsewhere. Is all. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's terrible, but it is not perfect yet. So sorry, everybody. I'm getting over a cold still, or some sort of sinus infection. So if you hear me sniffling and making gross noises, I do apologize for it. I've been doing my best not to, but so anyways, they do the giraffe scene, and then they have the same interaction. Joel's like, "Is it everything you hoped for?" And then she says something like, "You can't beat this view." But it looks just like the game, exactly. As I remember the scene. Mm-hmm. It's weird how one-to-one it is. And then Joel tries to talk Ellie out of this again. He goes, "Listen, we could just go back to Jackson. You don't got to do this." And she goes, "Listen, I'm going to follow you anywhere you go, but there's no halfway with this. We finished what we started." And she kind of puts him back in his place. "Joel, listen, all this can't be for nothing, right?" And that's the line that kind of sticks with the gamer. It can't be for nothing. All the trials and tribulations they've gone through to get this far, Tess dying, and all of the raiders and those people that died, just the different, David's crew and, surviving, and then her almost getting raped, and then, you can't just turn back when you're there. You got to see it through, and that's Ellie's point of view, and that's how it is in the game, and I think that's right. I think that was good, that moment. I thought it was good. It was 1-to-1 pretty much the game. There was a little more dialogue with her saying, "Hey, listen, when this is over, wherever you want to go, Joel, I'm with you," which was kind of nice to hear. But I don't know. And then we get this weird moment where, Joel's ear can't really hear well out of it, and it gets brought up earlier and stuff, and they're walking into what looks to be like a triage center, or it's outdoors, but the tents and stuff, and Ellie brings up, something. In the game, this is where Joel opens up about Sarah to Ellie. Mm. In the show, this is where this is also character background we never had of Joel. He tells her, she says something like, he says, I was at one of these places when this happened or something. And she goes, when the guy shot and missed you? And he goes, I was the guy who shot and missed. So implying, pretty much that Joel tried to take his own life, which is kind of put me back on my heels a little bit. Like I was like, wow, that's not what we know of him in the game either. So it makes sense though. I mean, I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me. It was just a little bit of extra flair they put in there about Joel. Did you have an opinion about that backstory for him?
I don't know if that is a change, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
And that was a piece of dialogue, and this just shows you how stupid I am, that escaped me the first time around. Like, I was just like, oh, okay. Like, I don't really understand what he's implying here. And then I, like, kind of thought about it later. I was like, oh, that's what he means.
In the show or in the game?
Like I said, I'm not gonna even pretend to remember the game perfectly. So I thought I remembered this being a part of the game, but it might not be. It might just be my imagination.
Yeah.
But I remember them. I thought I remember them having a similar conversation, but it's possible that it's not in there. I don't know. I thought this was cool. I thought it was interesting that this episode is really weird, and it's like this in the game too, where it goes from the whole season Ellie being this talkative character and Joel just like being tight-lipped and kind of smart with Ellie, and then this episode it just fucking flips and Joel's talking and talking and talking and being positive and all this stuff, and Ellie is just quiet the whole time.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just one of those moments where he kind of just decides like to let his guard down, and he just tells her what's up.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of, I think, opens Ellie up a little bit. But then, like, right after this is where they get captured by the Fireflies, and this moment is completely different than in the video game. And I don't know how you feel about that part of it, but there's a whole sequence of them like trying to get around a bunch of infected and all this stuff in the tunnels and everything that they completely left out of this sequence. And I get that like that the game isn't really or the show really isn't about the infected and all of that. But at the same time, it's like they had one more chance to like show clickers and all of this stuff in this season to kind of like leave that little stamp on it, and they could have done that, and just added like 10 minutes to the show, to this episode. And it's kind of like the theme throughout this whole fucking season has just been like, if they had just added 10 more minutes here and like a little bit more like exposition here or a little bit more game stuff here. But like I was shocked. This is one of the things that shocked me the most. It completely blew my mind that they didn't include any infected in this last episode. Other than obviously we see that infected at the very first cold open that kills Ellie's mom. Or infects her, I guess, because Marlene technically kills her. But I don't know. I just thought it was kind of interesting and ultimately unimportant. But I thought that it's okay to have a little bit of just like pomp and circumstance, especially in the last episode.
Yeah.
Like, give us some Flash, give us some fucking zombies, give us some whatever, infected, give us a little bit of, visual flair before we go on. Because, like I said earlier, I loved the whole silent massacre that Joel goes on in the hospital. I think that it's portrayed very well, but I think it could have been better if it was balanced with this like tense infected moment. before that, whenever they get captured.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I thought it was a little bit of a miss there, but I like I said, I think ultimately it was unimportant to the storytelling.
Yeah. It was rushed, man. The thing is too is like they had that conversation where Ellie's like, well, time heals all wounds, I guess, and Joel's like, it wasn't time that did it, and he's looking at her like oh, it was him finding Ellie that has helped him get through the death of his daughter, which is interesting. But yeah, they get ambushed, dude, like you said, and like it was just a flashbang, and it's just like, I don't know. There was nothing really fancy about the way they got taken in, and he wakes up, and Marlene's there, and he's like, well, I need to see her, and she's like, no, we're not gonna show you, and he starts wigging out like, oh, I need to see her now, show me her now, and he's yelling, and you can see the old Joel starting to come out, and she tells him she's getting prepped for surgery, and that the virus grows. The cordyceps starts in the brain, or that's where it grows. And she tells Marlene, she gives Joel the switchblade, and tells the guards to take him out to the highway, and if he tries anything, just to shoot him. And he's doing this walk, that you do in the thing, and it's pretty similar. They get to this, he stops a couple times. You're like, what's going on? You tell he's ruminating on like, shit, I got to do something, and he just fucking goes balls out. But the thing that I didn't like, and is the thing that you liked about it, and I'll tell you why I wasn't a big fan of the way they did this. And they could have done a little bit of mix and match. If I'm, who the fuck am I? They could have done a little mix and match, though. The slow-mo with the sad song going. I think this entire series on HBO, the focus doesn't really seem. I mean, granted, as soon as Ellie is in the picture, the focus is taken away from Joel, and even though there's the side things about him and his brother, and like. You get little tidbits of things, but the focus has been Ellie at every step of the way that they could have made it about her. As a gamer, you don't know like how this is going to end. Now, granted, like the director Neil has gone through Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us Part 2. So he now has a clear vision of exactly what he's aiming for. But I think some of the intrigue and some of the coolness of the first game and the way the story I feel is presented in video game is that it leans a little more into Joel as a character. And I'm not saying that he didn't get his due in this HBO series. But I mean, they almost like when the Last of Us game ended, I felt like I had some agency over Joel, right? And I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna kill all these people to save Ellie. It was no question when I was playing the game. Like I didn't feel an ounce of like, oh, these poor people. When I was playing the game, wasn't even a concern of mine. So for them to present this scene kind of like slow and sad, and you're seeing the doctors hit the ground and the guns going off, they portray Joel, in my opinion, as a fucking straight up murderer. And like they take that little bit of the equation out of it for the viewer to be like, no, fuck these people. I'm on Joel's side. Like I think the majority of people at the very end, when he actually saves Ellie, I feel like the question still ends with the question, did he do the right thing, right? But as he's doing it in the TV show, I'm like, fuck, this is hard to watch. This is hard to watch. Like, I didn't want to watch him killing those people. Like,
yeah, you definitely, I think that it all boils down to the fact that you don't have agency over Joel in the TV show.
It could be it.
In the game, you play as him the whole time. You are not literally Joel, but you are in essence controlling him the whole time. And so you have some agency over, you have done the things, you kind of grow an understanding of being Joel.
You feel like the responsibility of caring for her.
You've spent like 15 hours with this character. You're really, really invested. So when this happens, you're just like, I'm getting her out of there. And they do a really good job of like putting you in his shoes. Now, you could be a devil's advocate and say that like maybe that is not how Neil originally wanted you to feel, and maybe it was just a byproduct of the game medium that made you feel a sympathy for Joel that you might not have otherwise felt. But I will say that I think a lot of it is Pedro Pascal's performance, because in the TV show, I think he does a great job. And like I said, I really love the way that the episode is shot and the way that the audio is done. But his performance makes him literally seem like a fucking serial killer.
Yeah, he's cold.
In the last episode.
He's fucking cold.
He's just like, he doesn't give a fuck. It's over. All of these people are dead before they know it. And it doesn't matter if this girl could save the entire world by dying. He's not losing another daughter. And I think that was the theme of the game too. I think that the blow was just softened by our connection to Joel in the game. And so I think it's just a different perspective on the same story. And I don't necessarily think that it's worse. I just think that it's harder to absorb, if that makes any sense. Like, I think
yeah, dude, it was hard for me to watch, but I think the slow-mo, bodies dropping in slow-mo, how can your mind not go to all these mass shootings that we've been exposed to and just be like, this guy's a fucking animal, like, we need to kill Joel now. Like, he's I can't root for this guy, like, ever again. Like, no matter how endearing he is. Like, you can't just fucking walk in and murder all these people who pose no threat to you whatsoever. Like some of those people, he didn't have to shoot. Like, I don't mind him, like, killing the dudes at David's camp with the knife and stuff. Like, those guys, they were portrayed as bad dudes. Like, the Fireflies here weren't really confrontational with him. They were just like, listen, we paid you to do this thing. You did this fucking thing, and now you're going to go. This is what you do. So I think part of it that would have fucking maybe made it feel a little better, because in the game, that hospital scene when you're mowing down all these people, you're getting fucking gunned down too by people with AKs. And it's not just one or two dudes. It's like all of the Fireflies. Like, every living Firefly is like hiding. They have search patrols. They're looking for you. If they see you, they're shooting at you. And it's like, I got to get through these bad guys so I can save Ellie. It's not like all these fucking people have no shot at killing me. I'm just going to murder them in cold blood. It's like, it's more of an opposition. In the show, it's just portrayed as these guys don't even stand a fucking chance. Like, I know,
murdering them. Yeah.
Dude, when I played the game, like, I die there all the time because it's so difficult to get through the bad guys. They have grenades. They have fucking howitzers and shit. Like, they have all the ammo, all the guns in a game that's like very resource stringent. So like, you're watching your ammo and shit, and all of a sudden you're in the Firefly hideout, and everybody all your opposition is locked and loaded with like machine guns, and you have like a pistol. It's like, yeah, this is gonna be tough, but I gotta kill these guys, because if I don't, Ellie ain't gonna make it, right? But like in the TV show, it was just so much. Let's put it in slow-mo. Let's show like seemingly innocent people who are just trying to do good just get wiped out, shot in the face, shot in the kneecaps, shot in the back of the head. Let's just watch that in slow-mo. But like, I think he needed more opposition, man. Like, I think they really painted this situation, even though it's subtle different, they painted it in such a different way than the game paints it. And it makes you lean heavy against Joel's actions. And I think it takes away ultimately from the final question of the game, is like, did he do the right thing? Did he not do the right thing? in the game, I was like, oh my God. Like, I sat and thought about it and ruminated on it for weeks. I was like, what would have I done? Of course I would have saved my daughter. Of course. It's not even his daughter, but that's how you think of it. Of course I would have. But then you're like, I don't know. This is what she wanted. But did she know that they were going to kill her to save the world? Like, that's the other thing. Was she told this? No. They just put her out. Like, what was the discussion? You start thinking about all these things. But when I left this episode, all I thought about was like, fuck, Joel's fucking piece of shit. Like, it wasn't, there was a disconnect in the way it was displayed for me. He went ham for sure, but it wasn't going ham and like he's fucking Rambo and he's fighting a bunch of gorillas coming after him. Like, you know what I mean? Like guerrilla mercenaries and shit. Like, he's just killing a bunch of innocent people that he doesn't have to because he's pissed off. And then he's going to go save her and then makes the nurses turn around like he might kill them. Yeah, face. Can you imagine being those nurses? The two women? And he's just like, turn around. And he's got a gun pointed at your head. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what are they going to do to you, man? You know what I mean? Like, settle down.
I do think that this does kind of load up the so two things, like one short little sidebar. I love the gaminess, the kind of homage to the game where it showed Joel like running out of ammo and like picking up one of the other guy's weapons.
Yeah, that was
like
good.
A couple times, like it's very reminiscent of the game, like him doing this stuff to get through the hospital.
Yeah.
But the other thing was, like, I think that I agree with you in that when I played the game, when I was done, I was unnerved with The Last of Us when I beat it the first time, not because I was put off by what Joel had done, but because I couldn't decide if it was right or not.
Right.
And I don't get that, like you're saying, I don't get that at all from this TV show. From the TV show's perspective, it's like Joel is wrong, period.
He fucked up.
And
yeah, it gives you the answer.
That's kind of what I get from it. And I wish they could have shaded it a little bit more gray like they did the game. I don't know how they do that without giving you agency over Joel. I know that's
well, I think
that's
they could have, instead of showing us the intro with the mom, they could have just spent more time at him and Ellie like bonding more, because honestly, like, and the more I look at this show, like, I think it's the best video game adaptation out there. I'm not sure they could have done it any better than how they did it, right? I don't know how you could do it better with maybe the time frames that they had, but I mean, we didn't get a whole lot of those two bonding. We didn't get a whole lot of, when we got an entire
season, we really did.
We got an entire episode of Joel and Tess at the beginning. Joel and his daughter, Joel and Tess. Ellie shows up. They hate each other. We get Frank and Bill, and then we get like an episode they focus on Sam and Henry and the leader of that other camp, and then we get the episode of Riley and Ellie. Like, really, where's Joel and Ellie's relationship? Is it just implied? Like, it's not. It doesn't hit the way it should, and I think this is the miss of the show. You don't feel the connection between the two of them.
Yeah, and I really don't think that we should spoil anything about The Last of Us Part 2, but it really kind of concerns me a little bit with how they're going to do the next season. I hope so what I'm hoping is that there's a lot of I won't spoil The Last of Us Part 2 for people, but there are a lot of, because it takes place like years after The Last of Us Part 1. But I will say there's a lot of flashbacks of like little adventures that Joel and Ellie took
between the first and second years. Yeah.
And I hope that they do like they did with the Bill and Frank episode, where it's like they have whole episodes that are like their relationship.
Yeah, get some
building.
vignettes in there. You know what I mean?
Stuff that we didn't get in the first season, because I think they weren't sure if they were going to get a second season, so they just kind of rammed this thing through. And while I think they did the best job they could in 9 episodes, this season could have easily been 12 to 15 episodes that are an hour long, and they could have put a little bit more exposition in here.
Or at least 10.
And yeah, one more would have been nice. I don't know. It would have been nice to just have a chill episode that had very little confrontation, that was just Joel and Ellie kind of doing their thing.
Just traveling
like,
together.
I know that's maybe a little bit boring for the new viewer, but it would have made you care so much more leading up to this final, we'll call it the final battle, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know, I'm with you on the way that they portrayed the ending, and I don't know, it's interesting. I think that they did, even though I liked the way that they presented the ending, I do, like I said, I reiterate that I do agree with you that they presented Joel a little bit more harshly than you would have thought by playing the video game. Now, I don't know if you knew this, but there's a cameo in the operating room. One of the nurses is Laura Bailey.
Oh, I missed that.
Who plays Abby in The Last of Us Part 2.
That's ridiculous.
So you wouldn't know because she has a mask on and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she is in there as a cameo. There's a funny picture from the set floating around online of her like giving, like on the set in that room, like giving the peace sign, and the guy that's playing the doctor is like literally playing dead on the floor right beside her. Like it's funny. So funny. But I will say, like, if we're just going to talk about individual scenes, that scene in particular is very close to the game.
Yeah, it is.
And I remember that being one of the hardest parts of the game to kind of get through, because you have to kill the doctor. There's no way around it. Like, the game will just literally sit there until you shoot him. So it's because you think, based on the way that the game is written up until that point, maybe they'll give you an option to just like pick up Ellie and leave. But no, they make you shoot the doctor. And in this game, Joel doesn't waste time. He's just like, when the doctor picks up the scalpel and he's like,
"You can't do this.
I won't let you take her." He just fucking shoots him like right away.
Yeah, there's no him hawing, nothing.
And he's not even sorry. Like, there's no remorse in his eyes. He's like, just like I said, he looks like a serial killer. He's totally cold that whole time.
Yeah, he's not the Joel that goes up into the sniper's nest, where the bloater's attacking everybody, and he looks at the old guy and he goes, "Come on, man, don't make me do this. Don't make me do this, man." And then the guy turns on him and he has to kill him. Like, Joel didn't want to do that. But yeah, in this, I mean, I was very much in the game like you were. Like, I'm going to try not to kill this person because they're not posing a threat to me. And clearly he's not going to kill Ellie while I'm standing here. So.
Yeah, before this, everyone else is shooting at you first.
Right.
Or they're like trying to kill you and you're sneaking up on them. Whereas like at this point, like the doctor is not trying.
You become the aggressor in that emergency room.
You become the aggressor because the guy, even though he has a scalpel, is no real threat to you as a guy with a gun fucking walking into an operating room with unarmed people.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then like the end with Marlene, like all this is exactly like the game.
Mm-hmm.
And like this whole ending sequence is identical to the game, from the operating room all the way through the final shot of the episode.
Yeah.
And I was kind of curious if they would try to do like some little pan out fucking outro sequence on the TV show, because the game ends like literally just ends. And they do the same thing in the TV show right after Ellie's just like, okay. And after Joel lies to her. And it's exactly like it is in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how the population at large will sort of like how that will hit with them. You know what I mean? Because it does feel, and it felt like this in the game too, but it does feel a little bit like a cliffhanger, Like it's very like, oh, shit's not okay. Because you can tell that Ellie knows that he's lying.
Right.
Even in the game.
Or suspects it at the very least. Yeah.
Or suspects it, but she doesn't, like, she's choosing not to believe it. And it's, I don't know, it's wild. Like, I'm so curious how they're going to tackle season 2 because Ellie is so much older in The Last of Us Part 2 that I don't know how they're going to do that with Bella Ramsey being as young as she is. And I mean, without waiting a few years to do it. Like, Bella Ramsey, how old are you? Let's find out. Oh, she's not actually that young. She's 19.
Yeah.
So they could probably do some hair and makeup to make her look older and more grizzled, like Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2. And they could probably do the next episode right away. Because they did a good job of making her seem pretty young in this episode in this season.
Yeah, I thought so.
But yeah, I am. I will say, I'm very happy with the season. Just closing thoughts here. I'm really happy with the season. I think that there were a couple of episodes that, like, I honestly feel a little bit like episode 4 didn't necessarily need to happen. I feel like they could have combined 4 and 5, and then they could have added exposition on some of the other stuff with Ellie and Joel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they gave us 2 episodes to deal with Henry and Kansas City and all this stuff. And in the game, they added a whole new character in there when we didn't even get enough time with Joel and Ellie. I will say that without a doubt, episode 3 is the best episode of the whole season, and it doesn't even include Joel and Ellie, which was the Bill and Frank episode. I just think in terms of just a single episode,
standalone episode,
television,
yeah,
it is, in my opinion, one of the best I've ever seen. But I think that, other standouts, obviously episode 5 and episode 8 I thought was really good, although we had some issues with the way that they portrayed that whole sequence with David and it being daytime and all this stuff. I even thought that the last episode was good. I just thought that it was rushed. But overall, I would say that, and obviously the first 2 episodes were awesome because they had those dope cold openings that were flashbacks. And all in all, I'll say that I think that it's really, really, I'll even say that it's a great season of television.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a few things that they missed on that prevented it from being like greatest of all time in terms of seasons of television, if that makes any sense. Like, I certainly think that this show is going to win awards, but I don't necessarily think that it's up there with some of the greatest TV shows ever made, specifically because of some of the things that they missed out on that we talked about. But that's just one man's opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about it.
I was thinking the other day in the shower. I do a lot of shower thoughts. And I was thinking, could they have done any better with this? And I think the answer is they could have done different. But better is just really opinion. Like, and it's so hard, like you said before, from us who've played the game multiple times, and you go in knowing things, and then they change some things. They don't really change a lot. We got to the same end point, and I think that was the focus for them. As long as we got to where we needed to go, if they could find a better way to get us there, they would take it. And if they couldn't, they would just stick with what they had. So I think they probably had plot points. Okay, here we need to do this. We got to get here. We got to get here. We got to get here. We got to get to the end, right? And they peppered things in that were interesting. I think things that made sense. I think that it, by and large, is the best video game adaptation yet ever of anything to film, for sure. So they've done right there. And the music was spot on. The acting was fantastic. I just didn't feel like this was the end, man. This was it. This is where it's over, and you're supposed to just be like, what the fuck just happened? Like, what? It was that the right thing or the wrong thing? And I guess the internet's asking themselves that question. Did Joel do the right thing? Did they not do the right thing? And I bet you find 100 people online that are reviewing the show say, oh, I went in cold. I didn't know anything, that fucking knew something about the show, just to get the views and stuff. But I wonder how genuinely that question is received and answered by folks who didn't play the game. I bet we see an overwhelming response that Joel fucked up. And in the video game world, that debate is still going on, whether he did the right thing. And I think they missed there. And it's a big target to miss. I mean, that is what made the show the game so freaking important. And I don't think they spent enough time on Joel and Ellie together. And that's the only issue I have with the whole thing. But I think it's something worth pointing out, and that might be a hot take that people don't agree with, man, because I know the internet is on fire about this show. They love it. But if you really take a step back and look at it retrospectively in a year, are you going to say, man, I would have liked to have seen more Joel and Ellie interacting, and because the Christmas cards that Naughty Dog sent out, and the Valentine's Day cards, and the blah 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 cards, it's like Joel and Ellie camping out, having a nice time, and you want to remember them that way, the characters that way. You know what I mean? And we didn't get a lot of that in this episode, in this season, and I don't think we're probably going to get much of it in part 2. They
did say that part 2 would be 2 seasons, but then again, part 2 is also twice as long as part 1. Right. So it kind of makes sense there. I am curious to see how they will portray it, but I think that you and I are in agreement that if there's one thing to kind of take away from this episode from a critical perspective, it's that I do believe that there was a little bit more grayness in the game that was not in the show. Basically, I think the consensus would be, like you said, from the TV crowd perspective, that Joel did a bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas, like, in the game, you were like, yes, but also no. You know what I mean? Like, so, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, the end of The Last of Us, the game, fucked me up because I wasn't sure what was right and what was wrong. Whereas the TV show fucked me up because I was like, Joel just sucks now. And like, and I think that that's partially because we don't, and we've reiterated this 1,000 times. That's why I'm hoping in season 2, they redeem Joel a little bit by showing a lot of these flashbacks with Joel and Ellie just growing up together.
Yeah.
And getting closer and seeing how much she means to him and how much he means to her, and maybe make it seem a little bit more gray.
I think part of the issue too.
We'll have to see.
Yeah, dude, you're right on, and I think part of the issue is this too. Is they don't imply that the reason why he's attached to Ellie so much is because he lost his own daughter. In this show, they straight up tell you pretty much that's why. And he's thinking about his daughter. He does these things, and it's more in your face. And it's like, he knows that Ellie is not his daughter. He knows this, but she has given him the feeling of being important again. And he feels like what he does matters. And he has someone looking up to him. And he has somebody that respects him. And somebody that wants to joke with him. And somebody who wants to follow him. And be around. Someone that makes him want to wake up and grab a cup of coffee. And not kill himself, right? Like, he's got that person now. It doesn't matter that he lost his daughter so much as it does that he finally has someone that he can care about. You know what I mean? in a way that a father cares for their kid. But they keep going back to the daughter in this show, and it's just like, okay, I get it. I get you lost. You know what I mean? But like, they don't do that in the game as much. There are points like where he gets the picture, and then he gets the watch scenes, and But I mean, he had that flashback where he saw that woman at Jackson, and he's like, that could be my daughter, and he's like having these panic fucking attacks, like it's too much on him, and it's just like, I don't know, man. I think that when end of where my rant is going to be, when you have an idea and it's an original idea, don't go back and try to adjust it anymore. Like, what you did was amazing. Keep that. You don't like, and I understand that, like, guaranteed Neil, when he was working on this game, the first game, he had no probably idea that they were even going to do a part 2 or where it was going to lead. So now going back and reworking part 1, knowing that he's where he went with part 2, he can pepper in this extra little shit. I don't know. It's frustrating. That's where I'm at, man. That's all I got.
Yeah. I don't know if you could see, you might not even be able to pull it up because of the Discord, but I posted that picture of Laura Bailey
really? Yeah, I can't.
In the
it's not
fucking operating
right
room.
Now, but that's funny.
Okay.
I don't know, man. That's where I'm at. They did a great job.
They did a great job. Obviously, we've expressed some criticisms the last few episodes, because I do think that the episode sort of declined a little and plateaued after the first few episodes. But I still will reiterate that by far it is one of the best seasons of television I've seen in a long time, even though I have some gripes as a fan of the game. So I still am extremely excited for season 2 to see what they come up with. Chances are it'll be a couple years anyway, because it took them forever to release this one. So I don't know, but I am waiting with breath bated, we'll say.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks, Jake, for wrapping this up. And man, we nailed this. We every Monday we did this. So talk about commitment. So if you are just tagging along for this ride, we really, 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 really would appreciate you, if you're a gamer, to hop on over and check out our podcast. PS This Is Awesome, a PlayStation podcast. I've been doing it for a long time. Every week we go over the current gaming news for PlayStation, talk about games we're playing. We talk about games that are coming out. And we don't just talk about surface level stuff. We usually get into the news points, the companies making the games, the developers, what's good for Sony, what's not good for Sony. We talk about some interesting topics. So if you're interested in sticking along and listening to us every week, that's where you can find us. But thanks for tuning into this. This is episode 9 of PS This Is The Last of Us. And we will be back when season 2 starts back up. And don't forget, if you enjoyed what we did, we have a Patreon that you can support us at $1 a month. Patreon.com/PS This Is Awesome. With that out of the way, Jake, I'm going to go upstairs and make another cup of hot tea and try to nurse my voice and my throat and my cold. And do you have anything you'd like to say to the listeners who've been with us through all 9 episodes?
Nope, I don't think so. I'm ready to get some
food
snacks myself.
Heck yeah.
And then, maybe get some sleepy times, because I did not sleep last night, so I'm really stoked about getting some bed.
All right. Well, so it goes. Until next time, like The Last of Us, P.S.
Yes.
This is awesome.
This is awesome.